Welcome to Bridging Gaps, the business podcast sharing the challenges and stories of fellow business owners.
Hello and welcome back to Bridging Gaps, the business podcast. This week, I'm in conversation with Vanessa Ugatti. Vanessa is the True Worth expert and author of Amazon bestseller, True Worth: How to Charge What You're Worth and Get It. In this episode, Vanessa and I talk about her journey to discover what it was that she really wanted to do and how throughout her career and her life, she's made multiple leaps of faith and has found that the universe is always there to catch her. She's had massive ups and downs. She's lost, family, friends, all in a really short period of time. And she talks about how she came through that, how she worked through some of those really challenging times in her life and how they helped her to move into where she is now, which is really working with people, because Vanessa is all about helping people, whether it's finding their true worth from a business sense or more recently wanting to help them find their self-worth. So my apologies as well. This episode was meant to go out last week. I had a glitch, which means that it didn't go out as scheduled, and therefore we've had a little gap of 1 week. But please join me now in welcoming Vanessa to the show. Hello, and thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Debra. I love being interviewed. It's such fun.
It's a bonus when you love it.
Yes.
So Vanessa, I wanted to just start off with a little bit about what you do now. So you have a company, the True Worth Expert. And I was wondering if you could just share a little bit about what that is and what you do with it.
So what it is helping professional people be able to generate more income without having to get more clients or do more work, but generate income ethically, not ripping people off. I just must make that distinction because it's very important to me, because it's amazing how many good people who are established as well. It's not just about people who are starting business. It's across the board at all levels, all experiences. Undercharge, discount unnecessarily, and overservice clients. So I'm mainly talking around service-based businesses, but the majority of businesses tend to be service-based anyway. So these are really commonplace problems that occur with certain personality types. And I was one of them. Or yes, I was one of them. That's why I do it. So they're usually very good at what they do, very conscientious people. However, they're also perfectionists, people pleasers, and quite sensitive. So they're always looking after their clients excessively, and not just their clients, everybody else as well. So the behaviors they have going on in the workplace are usually going on in their private lives as well.
So it all just kind of multiplies out. And I was really interested when I, read through some of the information you sent me. I'd assumed prior to receiving that we were talking about people starting out, because I know it's a conversation I have a lot of times with different people about worry about charging and how to charge the right amount. But I think you said that it's people who have been established for generally about 10 years or 10 years.
Well, it could be any level, but I tend to work with people who are established in their businesses or within firms. So it's got nothing to do with the person's capability at what they do or their experience. And it has everything to do with the way they think and their personality and their mindset. So just because somebody has been doing their work for 10 years or 20 years or even longer, and they're good at it, doesn't mean to say they're comfortable with the business side of it. And that's the thing. It's a very different set of knowledge that you need to be running the business and to be dealing with the clients and to be charging them and to be managing them, all those different areas. It's got nothing to do with the expertise. So whether you're starting out in business or whether you're established in business, if you've never really addressed dealing or handling the business side of things, then the chances are you've got challenges going on if you're this certain personality type.
Well, and I know it's something I've definitely come across, well, and experienced myself, that you come out, you think you're going to start, doing something because you're really good at it. Everybody has said to you how amazing you'll be. And you are amazing at that thing, but you haven't realized that there's this whole other skill set that you've now got to take on. And I know, I can remember the first talk that I gave as me, as an individual representing, my business. And I walked into it and I was so nervous, and I was thinking, what's going on? I've given presentations, I don't know how many times. And I finally realized that it was because it was all about me, and it was very personal.
Yeah,
compared to
absolutely.
what I'd done before.
Yeah, yeah.
And it,
Absolutely. I mean, and I'll just tell you, just because it'll make you all smile, that I have a client who is an employment lawyer and part-time judge and is 70.
wow.
And he'd been running his own business for 20 years, doing very well, a very good turnover with established clients. And he'd been a partner in a law firm before that for 20 years. But when he came across me, he started to realize, I think because he was getting a bit older and there'd been a few things going on where he'd lost a client or something, his confidence was starting to go. And he came across me and he read my little book. And then he thought, I've never looked at my value in my entire career. So we got to speak, and I tried to push him away because I thought somebody of that age isn't going to want to be coached. Somebody of that, not just age, but stature. Not a bit of it. He persuaded me, and I coached him for 6 months, and we changed exactly what he was doing, how he was operating with his clients, because he hadn't put his fees up in 10 years.
Oh, wow.
He never had discussions with clients about fees. He just did the work and billed them.
Okay.
So, and he was, he's a very affable person, big brain, very humble sort of person, very unbig-headed, but very highly competent, highly conscientious, all the characteristics that I deal with. And so it's transformed things for him. And the aim is we're actually carrying on with more time together because he wants to, because we want to really get the balance in his life right. So he's able to do other things other than just work and design his life. Because if you can't design your life at the age 70 and have it how you want it, then when can you, as I say? But so it just goes to show that behaviours can be going on for years and people don't address them. And he actually said to me, he used to feel really uncomfortable about the whole money thing until I coached him. Now he doesn't have a problem with it.
And it makes a huge difference, I think, when you accept that, money is part of it, and we all know that, but it's almost accepting that you're going to ask for it, and there's no point in you doing this if you don't ask for it, and being able to stand by that valuation that you've put on, recognizing it as, in your words, your worth. And going, no, this is what I'm worth, and that is what I'm worth. And if you're not willing to pay it, then maybe you're not the client for me. It's just hard.
But you see, what I'm trying to say for those listeners who are new in business or haven't even started up, you're not alone, and there's nothing wrong with you because you're a human being. And it's happening to people, how, as I say, of all ages, all statures, all experiences. And so if you can sort it out before you get started in your business, then you'll have years ahead of you of not having the problem. Because, when I said to him about this, and now he's changed, and what he charges is more, and he's doing value charging, and he's still looking after his clients just as well as he ever did. It's just that he's looking after himself a bit better. And I've forgotten what I was going to say now after that.
Just went.
Completely and utterly went. But never mind, it'll come back. I can't remember what I said at the beginning, so it's just gone. But it's nothing to do with age. It's nothing to do with experience. It's perfectly okay. But I know what it was I was going to say, was that he said, my goodness, if I'd had this all those years ago, I could have been making millions more. Literally, it could have been millions that he made. But he didn't. And he accepts that he's doing it now, and it's okay, because now he's getting his life in as he would like it to be, rather than constantly running around for everybody else.
Which is fantastic because, it's all about getting our life to what we want it to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Vanessa, I'd like to go back a bit. Now, I know that we spoke earlier and, you had a number of jobs, but I think the one that is probably the most interesting point for us to start at is when you were, I think it was a sales and export administrator. And that's kind of the point where you made this shift in your life to start into your own business.
Yeah, I think it took longer than that, actually, but that was a pivotal point because I was working for a firm. I didn't like my boss. He was weak. I didn't like the job. I'd lost a friend the year before to cancer. I had my mother in hospital with depression and all sorts of nasty things, which I won't go into. And so, very often I think when people make changes, when a lot of things are occurring that are really unsettling them, and I knew I wanted to get out of there. And there was a day when I stood up in my office, which was open plan with everybody else around. And I said very loudly, I'll be out of here by the end of the year. That was 1999. And in the October, my mother died. And in the November, the firm were looking for people to take voluntary redundancy, and my hand went up faster than anybody else's. And I think I waited 2 or 3 weeks and then I got it. So I was out of the firm by the end of the year, as I'd predicted, or as I'd declared, if you like, to the universe. So that's where it started. And then all I knew at the time was I wanted to do some kind of training. I had no experience in it. I certainly hadn't heard of coaching. And so the journey began from there, really. But it took from there until 2006 before I actually started working on my own. So there was another job in between and various other activities. It could take quite a long time to tell you all of it. There was a lot happening.
So when you were going through that, you've got the voluntary redundancy. You've obviously had a lot of things going on in your personal life with your friend. How did that feel? Were you thinking that you wanted to go out and work for yourself, or were you just thinking, do you know what, I need to be out of here, and another job was on the horizon, even if you didn't know what it was?
Yeah.
So where?
Yeah. I mean, I call it taking leaps of faith, and I'm not here to tell people what to do, but when you listen to a part of yourself that says you've got to do this, by the way, it doesn't stop the fear, because the fear was enormous. I had enormous fear. But when you get to a point of you thinking, I just can't do this anymore. This is not for me. I know that I need to be doing something to do with training, but I don't really know what. I don't know how to even get a job for that. I'm going to take the money and run. And that's what I did. And I did go out job seeking. And I found a job, a part-time job, fairly quickly in a government-funded organisation that was offering training to people. And it wasn't quite training, but it was a starting point. That job only lasted just over a year when the company folded, the organisation folded. And then I moved into another job in tourism, would you believe, but where I needed to stand up and do speaking. So there was and that was part-time again. So outside of the working side, I was then looking at what is it I want to do, exploring different things, various things start coming to you. When you make a stand for yourself and you say, I'm out of here, I want to do something else, even if you're not entirely sure, somehow or another, the universe galvanizes itself and it starts bringing opportunities. And one of them was that actually got me the job in the New Forest, really, was somebody had advertised looking for public speakers, and I wasn't one. I'd had very little experience of it, but I was drawn to it, and I responded to it, and I phoned up. And he and I got on very well, and he asked me to do a talk on fear, the sort of fear that holds us back, to a group of people. And he was really scared of public speaking himself. And I did. And I had to hold a live tarantula in my hand as a symbol of fear as well. I don't like spiders either. So I was open. I was open to doing things. And he was going to publicize this. Well, he didn't really. But what he did was set up a website for public speaking. And he told me to go to Toastmasters International, to work on my speaking, which I did. And then he was getting hits on his website and he sent me people. So this was before I had a business.
Mm-hmm.
I started getting people sent to me to help them with their wedding speeches and things of that nature.
Okay.
And so I think at the time I'd probably been in Toastmasters for 6 months. So that was my experience really of speaking, and a 3-day course I'd been on. And people were being sent to me, and somehow or another I was helping them shift out of the fear, because fear was the thing that I was really interested in, and be able to do it. And I was getting good results. And it was then that I started thinking about, okay, so, how can I turn this into a business? But honestly, ladies and gentlemen, I was clueless about everything. I knew nothing about business. I really didn't. So I always say that I've done everything inside out, back to front, gone through the back door, etc., because that is the truth. And I speak truth, that when I'm talking, it's always the truth, because I don't believe in bullshit or telling people nonsense. This is how it's been for me. And sometimes, when you don't know very much, it's actually blissful, because you don't realize how much you don't know. You're in a state of ignorance. It's not a bad place to be. And you're learning as you're going along. I don't believe there's anybody who's gone into business knowing everything and got everything right at the beginning.
So when you were at this point, you're getting the customers are coming through to you, just almost through chance or fate, whatever you want to think of it as. And you're still in your part-time job.
You're still in a part-time job and really, doing this on the side and for very little money, very little money at all.
So did you make the decision then to say, well, what I'm going to do?
No. What happened was I was in this job in the New Forest as the membership officer, and I had a mini breakdown one day in the office in front of my administrator. I can't believe I'm saying all this publicly, but anyway, who cares? Because it's all past. This was about 2006. And I went off sick, and it was genuine. I mean, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know what? Again, I believe there's a part of us that guides us. And when we're not listening, it brings things to us that stops us in our tracks.
Yeah,
it could be an accident. It could be anything that you've got to change, because you cannot carry on this route, because it's not where you're supposed to be. So I had 6 weeks off, and 6 weeks off when you're living on your own is very, very difficult when you're feeling very low. However, during that time, I thought, nah, I can't go back. My father was still alive, so I did talk to him, and I had a bit of money in the bank, and I decided somehow or another that I was going to get on and start doing this, teaching people how to speak in public. And again, the universe brought me somebody who was a really good networker. So I got involved in networking. I didn't even know what that was.
When you're in a job, though, you don't. It is a whole different world.
It is.
Yeah, and you don't realize it until you've stepped from one to the other.
It's hysterical. But there was a guy I connected with who was, I would call him king of networkers. And so, then I started saying, okay, I'm going to do a 1-day public speaking workshop for 10 people and get bums on seats through this networking, and then put it together and deliver it. And that's what I did. And again, I had no idea of what I was really doing, but I did it. It was quite scary. I don't think I slept the night before. So I think you have to realize, if you're going to go into business, it's not for the faint-hearted. And it's all right to be scared. It's all right to be scared, and it's normal.
And did you go through? So you've been off. You've been feeling very low. You were off for 6 weeks. Realized that you don't want to go back, and that you're not going back. At that point, when you made that decision, and when you decided to try and make a go of the public speaking, did you feel, were you still low? Was it that you were now fighting yourself as well, or did that removing of that job, did that kind of free you up and help you to feel more enervated, I guess, again, and looking forward to the future? Or was it, no, I've got to do something, I've got to somehow make this work, and life is really tough at this point?
I guess it's quite difficult to remember exactly how I felt back in 2006. That's 13 years ago. I'm sure there'd have been a mixture.
Mm-hmm.
But I think sometimes, I very much go by my gut instinct, and more these days. And it was just, I knew I had to do it. And I didn't have the business plan or anything planned. As I said, I had no idea. So a lot of my life has been leaps of faith. And I seem to have been supported in one way or another. And I think I've got to the point now in my life where I think, yes, no matter what happens, I am being supported and guided. And there's been a lot of challenges, and there continue to be challenges. And I think if anybody thinks that you just get to the point where there's no challenges, they're probably kidding themselves. So if you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm not sure whether I want to do it or not, then you need to find out whether you do. And maybe you try it. And if it's really not for you, so what? You've tried it. But if it is for you, it's a journey, and it's rocky. I'm waving my hand here, doing it's up and down, even though people can't see that, because that is the truth. That's the truth of it.
No, absolutely. And as you said, that it doesn't, as you get more experience, as you become more established, it's not that the problems go away. It's just that they're different problems. And also, I think to some extent, you're expecting them now. You know they're going to come. And so hopefully it makes it easier to ride those waves. Whereas when you start, you're not necessarily aware or expecting the challenges that are going to be thrown at you.
No. Remember what I said at the beginning, I was clueless about everything. So actually, in a way, it was a blissful state. And then they got to a stage where I was very aware of the fact that there were things I didn't know, and that's really uncomfortable. And then you move through those things, and then you recognize that there are these different stages, whatever you're learning.
And so with the company, so you started off with the public speaking, and
I started off with the public speaking. So I'd do one-day workshops, really challenging because I didn't have much marketing going on. And I got really great feedback because it's my passion, and I know I'm good at that, and I seem to be able to help people and understand people and help them shift. So I'd always get really good feedback from people. And then it's, how do you find more business, so you're out networking or what have you. And I had I got a few things where I was in bigger firms, which was really quite exciting. But I really didn't have a clue about the marketing or the budget or anything of that nature. And then, of course, 2008 came, and I don't know how old people are listening, but there was an economic crash then. And there was another personal crash because I lost 3 people. So my father died, my ex-husband died, and my aunt died within 3 months of each other.
Oh, gosh.
And that was a complete crash to the floor. So, as I say, there've been a lot of challenges on the way. And I don't regret any of it, because I know all of it's been part of what my journey on this planet is. And it gives me such a breadth and depth of experience in life that whoever shows up in front of me as a client with whatever baggage they have, there's nothing that phases me. So that, it's been, a lot of my life has been my training ground for doing what I'm doing. So it's, if you're a coach, you probably know what I'm talking about. If you're not one, then don't be one. don't sign up for it.
So you're at this point now, you've actually been doing quite well. Your business is growing. You're still on this learning curve. And then we hit the personal and the financial crisis of 2008.
Yeah.
And what happened at that point? Were you...
I was completely on the floor. So, training was out of the window then, and I didn't have any big contracts or anything of that nature. I was an absolute mess when my father died, and the other things were going on as well. So then it was, oh my God, I didn't even feel like I was going to survive. That's the honest truth. You didn't know you were going to hear all of this, did you? And I certainly didn't know I was going to be sharing this. I don't think I've ever shared this quite like this before. So this is really quite good for me. It's very cathartic to know I can talk about it without feeling emotion, So I really just became a hermit, squirreled myself away. I needed to lick my wounds and look after myself, and also then seek help to understand what was going on for me, whether it was grieving process, etc. Because, when people die very suddenly, without warning, it's quite a thing to deal with. And when you lose 3 people in 3 months, then it's a lot.
Yes, it's hard enough losing one person when you knew that they were close to the
Yeah,
let alone
yeah,
unexpected and 3 people that were
yeah,
important to you.
yeah, yeah. So that was a bit of a journey going through that, and I did seek a lot of help, and continue working on myself, because I believe that relentless self-improvement is my middle name, probably. It's always been that. So I was feeling so dreadful, I didn't know what to do with myself, so I had to hide away because there was nothing I really could do.
Mhm.
Although I do remember I had a public speaking workshop that was already booked with a few people on it, probably about 3 or 4 days after my father's death, and I still went and did it.
Which shows a lot of resilience to be able to step up at that point in time and
Yeah.
deliver something.
Yeah, I still was able to do that. So I can't remember the exact timings, but it was quite a long time that I was really not in the right place. And then I got back into some networking again, and I met a guy who was a coach, and I signed up for some coaching.
Okay.
And because I needed to have somebody there boosting me up again. So the thing is, you cannot keep a Vanessa Ugatti down forever, because she's going to come back up and get back out there and get back on the horse. So then I'd go out networking, and I stopped trying to do the training workshops or anything like that. It was too hard going without the budget. So I started looking for clients who I could help, business owners, really, help them overcome the mental barriers that are stopping them moving forward, because everybody has those.
They do. We do.
And I'd go into a room and I'd look around and I'd feel drawn to somebody, usually because I like the look of them. And so I'd go over and start talking to them. They look like a really confident person, but, you cannot tell what's going on behind the mask. So, then I'd discover they had challenges going on. And if they were the right person, we'd have a discussion. And then I'd sign them up for one-to-one coaching. So suddenly I'd gone from doing public speaking training to coaching people. But the whole point was, with the public speaking training, the thing that really motivated me was the mind and understanding the mind. And during this time, at some point, I also did NLP courses and stuff of that nature, to understand more, because that was what I needed to understand for myself, what the hell is going on there with us as human beings, for me, but also for people I was working with. So that was okay, but I wasn't earning very much money, and I had no clue about charging or any of that stuff. And this was carrying on, and my mind, the good part of the mind, was telling me at one point, there's something else, there's something else, there's something else. But I had no clue consciously what it was. And then I stumbled, probably about 2012, I stumbled across a marketing program specifically for coaches that said you've got to have a niche. So I thought, well, yes, I've heard about this niching thing, but I don't know what my niche is, and I haven't got a clue how to do it. Again, loads of fear came up. This is an expensive program. Can I do this? But, financially I was okay because my father had left me money. So I said, the universe does support you when you go on a journey, not being ridiculous and not looking, not doing anything for yourself, but when you go on a journey because you've decided actually it's what you not just want to do, but almost must do. There's almost not really a choice in it. Then you do get supported. So I decided after a lot of procrastination that I would sign up for this program. And on the first workshop, they asked some questions and I wrote down some answers. And the subject of value or worth actually just appeared on the piece of paper. And they said, and obviously they're marketing people, that's marketable. So I said, well, you're the experts. I'll go with that. Another leap of faith. So off I went back networking again to find out about people's challenges around charging. And by the way, I had no idea how that had got on the piece of paper. No idea. Just came out. So off I went networking and talking to professionals. And, I tend to target accountants, lawyers, consultants, people who are selling time for money, those sorts of people. And I discovered pretty quickly that undercharging, discounting, as I said before, unnecessarily and over-servicing clients are really commonplace problems amongst experienced people, not just people new to business. So I thought, oh, that was really heartwarming to discover that. So then I looked at clients I'd been working with, and I discovered I'd already been helping some people around charging, which isn't surprising, because if they were lacking confidence or something was blocking them in one way, it was almost bound to be that their charging would be affected as well. So I thought, oh, good, more evidence that this is making sense. And then I looked at myself. So I shone the spotlight on myself. And of course, that's when I became incredibly painfully aware that I was clueless about charging. Not only clueless, but extremely uncomfortable, to the point of ridiculousness, where I would say what my price was when I got to that point and then carry on talking, because I was so scared of being rejected and them saying no and running away. And that was, and I mean, I must have looked so embarrassed. So I knew I have always felt everything really strongly, because I'm an empath and a sensitive. So we do tend to feel things more than the average person. But it's also very good, because if I'm feeling it that intensely, then I know that my clients are, what my clients are feeling, I should say. I know what my clients are feeling because I'm feeling it, or I felt it. So that was a real light bulb moment. And I thought, oh, now I know exactly what's happened. My unconscious mind knew all along. And by the way, your unconscious mind knows all about you and knows what you're supposed to be doing. Whether you're listening or not is another matter. So bit of advice here.
Shouting at you, and you're going, no.
Listen to it. You know, if we had a whole day, I could do a whole workshop on this subject alone, I'm sure. So I realized that, you know, that's why the subject had come forward, because I needed to sort this out for myself. And in order to be able to then help other people. But of course, when you're learning something for yourself because it's what you need to learn, that makes you the best teacher in the world, because you're learning inside out. You're teaching people from the inside out. You're not picking a book up and saying, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. I'm emotionally connected with the subject.
Well, and you understand the barriers that people will put up, the challenges, and as you say, it puts you in a much better place to be able to help them through that, because you really do understand that, some things look very black and white. Well, you just need to do this. And somebody who hasn't been that, or who doesn't have that emotional understanding, can't figure out why you're not just doing this. So understanding all of that stuff going on in your head must really help you to get them over what might have appeared as a purely black and white, just go and do that.
Yeah. See, that's where I think quite often, this is just an opinion, you can ignore it if you want to, but I think that's where sometimes training doesn't work, because they're neglecting the fact that even if something is simple and it's not rocket science, if you're not addressing the emotional aspect within the people within the room who might have hurdles, and it's got nothing to do with them being stupid or unintelligent, then it doesn't matter how many processes you give people. If they can't emotionally connect with it or overcome their own emotional barriers, they're not going to do it. So that was a light bulb moment, and then some for me. And then the next step, which was really the final step, if you like, and then it's just been growing from that, is that I was in bed one night. You know when you're half awake or half asleep?
Yes.
And that's a really nice feeling. And that's when your unconscious mind is most active and most open. A formula appeared in my mind, or at least 2/3 of the current formula. And that was UV, which is understanding your value, plus CV, communicating your value, plus CD, comfortable discussing fees, equals CW, charging what you're worth. And I say I only got the first two bits, first two parts. But I thought, oh yeah, that's it. I instinctively knew that it was correct, even though I didn't know how I knew. And it was more evidence that, to me, that the unconscious mind knows everything, but we don't consciously know things. But of course, the more you communicate, for want of a better word, with it, the more you listen to it and acknowledge it, the more it does for you, because it's there to help you.
Well, and I know for me that, and this actually, happened yesterday as well. I had a conversation with somebody, and it was a good conversation, but we were talking about something that was new to him as well. It was an idea he'd come up with, and I wasn't overly clear on what the idea was. And so I thought, well, it didn't matter for our conversation. We were able to continue, and I had a fairly long drive after that. And by the time I got home, I thought, okay, now I've got it. Now I think this is what he's saying and what he means, and was then able to actually have a follow-on conversation this morning where we were able to then evolve it further and to clarify, where it was going. But it was all, as you say, kind of in the unconscious, and the subconscious was just letting it roll around in my head before it sort of said, yeah, there you go, there's the answer.
Yeah,
So,
it
so
is.
I, yeah,
It's a genius. It's a genius. It's a genius because the processing capacity of your subconscious mind is millions of times the processing capacity of the conscious mind. And when you're doing something like driving, because you're unconsciously competent, you know how to drive. You don't have to think about it. That's when the unconscious mind is open again, and it's sort of taking care of those things. Or when you're in the shower, some of us in bed, washing up, those kinds of mundane jobs, it can be cogitating some challenge or solution that you're looking for, either for yourself or for a client or somebody else, and it's doing the work for you. And of course, the more you allow that to happen, the more it will happen.
So how did you've recognized that you've got major challenges in recognizing your own worth and charging appropriately. You've now got the formula where you've said, yeah, this is it, and just need to finish off that formula. How did you, first of all, tackle yourself? How did you get yourself to recognize that you were worth more than what you were doing, and that you were able to offer a value and have those conversations which before you'd found really difficult?
Well, I had signed up to this marketing program, so I'm not doing it on my own. If you think you can go into business and do everything on your own, then don't go into business, because you can't. You need help from other people. So, and I spent quite a lot of time on that. Then I've just moved from one thing to another. I have never, ever stopped having support and help to move and to grow, both in my business and also externally outside of my business, in terms of, getting rid of whatever's blocking me and regarding the issues that came up before to do with my father, etc. So that's what I said, I'm a relentless self-improver. So, I was in a position where it was so difficult for me actually saying a fee, let alone charging properly, to now being reasonably comfortable with doing it, and even being able to have discussions if people are challenged around how much I'm charging, to get them to understand the value. Because the whole point of what I do is to transform people so they don't have this problem for the rest of their lives. And so I'm not going to do that for 5p or 50p or a quid. I'm going to charge reasonably. But it's actually understanding those conversations that you need to have to be able to get that message across of the value. So I guess it's been 6 years, 7 years that I've been working on this, both on myself, as I never stop doing that, and with clients. And so I've not done it overnight for myself, but with where I am now, because of that experience, I can do it a lot faster with my clients.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know exactly what they need to say and do, and what I need to say and do with them to help them overcome those barriers and see what their value is. So, looking at your value as being the first step, understanding your value is your expertise and the results you get with your clients. But the longer you've been doing something, the more your value or expertise is unconscious, which means you take it for granted.
Absolutely. I was talking to somebody, I can't remember what I was using it as an example for, but it was along the lines of, if you told somebody, and for anybody listening, I am holding up my water bottle. So if you pick up a glass or a bottle, you don't expect to have to tell somebody that what they need to do is to lower their hand down to where it is, to put their hand towards it, to wrap their fingers round, to grip it and lift it up, because we assume that everybody knows that. And that's obviously a very, trivial example, but we forget that people don't know what we know.
No, that's right.
So
So that's the biggest problem. If people or business owners are going out there and not talking about the value, they will have problems charging, because the only other thing to talk about is the price.
Yes, exactly. And then you're trying to justify why you cost so much, and all of that.
Because you don't even believe it yourself. Yeah, so it's really, really challenging for people to understand their value. Let me emphasize that it really is challenging for all of us to understand our value, because of the fact that it is so unconscious. And if you're good at doing something, it is easy to you. But there is a whole load of work that you've done to get to that place. But it just might be that you had a gift for it or whatever. But it's been developed. Because if I look now at how I can work with people and the level of confidence I have compared with 10 years ago, it's night and day. So if I didn't keep reviewing my value and thinking about it, then I could still be charging what I was charging 10 years ago.
Well, and you don't, I remember a project that I worked on a long time ago, and I was dealing with formulation chemists. And when I started this project, I didn't even know that there was such a thing as a formulation chemist, let alone have any clue what they did. And for whatever reason, one of the first things they decided I needed to do was to go with them to a formulation chemist conference, which is strangely hard to say. And I remember sitting there, and just so much of this, probably, apart from the hellos, how are you, probably everything else pretty much went over my head. And it was about a year later that I was on a plane coming back from a meeting in Germany, and I was reviewing my notes, and I was looking through, and I suddenly thought, a year ago, I wouldn't have understood this, let alone have been able to take these notes, because my knowledge had just built up over that time to such an extent. And it's gradual. So as you say, you don't realize what you've taken on, and it makes it really easy to undervalue it.
Yeah, of course. I always use the analogy of driving a car as it happens. So when you learn to drive a car, there's a lot to do. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot for the conscious mind to do, because you're having to coordinate hands and feet, judge distance, split speed, work out what the other cars are doing, decipher the highway code. It's a lot. So your brain is exploding, and you're really concentrating hard to drive this vehicle. But then the behaviors that are just repeated as you keep practicing and practicing, you then get to a point where you're consciously competent. So you've improved a lot, but there's still concentration going on. And then there'll come a day when you move into that place of unconscious competence, where you just drive, you jump in the car, turn on the ignition, hopefully you look in your mirror occasionally, and you drive off. You get to your destination, and you may have even not remembered the journey, because your unconscious mind was taking care of it for you. And at that point, you just take it for granted. Mm-hmm. You don't get out of the car going, wasn't I fantastic? Didn't I drive really well? You just get out of the car and go about your business. And the only time you actually really value it is if you break your leg and you can't drive, or the car breaks down and you've got to get a bus or a taxi. Then you value it. Other than that, you take it for granted. That's human nature. So we have to really overcome human nature. And what I do is get people to move their expertise out of their unconscious mind into their conscious mind. Oh, that's what I do. Oh, that's what it is for the client. Oh, yeah, now I see.
And it's taking away that it's easy. How can I charge that much for it? As you said before, it's not necessarily easy. It's just that you've gone through that learning to get to this stage where it is. So, Vanessa, as you moved on and you found the right thing for you, one of the other things that you did was to write a book.
Yeah, very small one, very
Yeah.
small book. This is part of this marketing program. So
Okay.
it reveals the formula that I've already told you. It's a simple book for people to read to start making them think. So it's making people think, oh, right, okay. Because most people are operating out of their unconscious mind every day of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
From what they've always done. People get dressed in a certain way. They shower themselves in a certain way. They drive to work a certain way. They make a cup of tea a certain way. They do many different things every day that they do the same way, and they think the same way. So if they keep thinking the same thoughts, they're going to get the same results. So you have to think differently. So the purpose of the book is to do that, is to be really simple, because nobody wants to read some great long-winded, complicated, boring thing. And it's not something that I sell. It's something to get people interested in the subject. I think they call it a lead magnet, don't they?
Mm-hmm. They do.
Online marketing. But it's valuable in itself for anybody, whatever stage they are in their business, because it's a good reminder to say, I need to be thinking about what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, not just automatically listening to the monkey mind voice that says, I can't possibly charge that.
Mm-hmm. And when you look forward now, do you have a vision of where you're going, or do you expect that you're going to take another leap of faith, or is that as yet unknown?
I am at the moment. It never stops. I'd like to conquer the world, really. See, behind what I haven't revealed yet is that charging what you're worth, I call it the front window. And behind it, is about self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
So how we think about ourselves determines how we act, how we behave. So that's the challenge that we all have. And if people don't realize that, then they will never be totally free. So self-worth is at the heart of everything that we do and drives our behavior. So I do work with people that is addressing their self-worth issues as well as charging what they're worth, because the whole thing is linked. So I'm currently looking at, where can I take all of this? Because my client base, I'm moving into the law firms and accountancy practices. And believe me, it's not easy, because when you've come from nowhere with no contacts, no background as a lawyer or an accountant or anything, then, it's not easy to do that. But I don't want to be I see myself as very individual. I don't want to be like everybody else. I am different. And my job is to provoke people. So I'm always looking for more speaking opportunities. And I think bringing this whole self-worth thing out there, not necessarily connected with the charging, is part of the journey as well. So I need to be even more visible. I need to be a lot more visible than I am. And I need to be able to touch more people. So I think, when there are a lot of people suffering out there, good, clever, professional people. And I have conversations with people, and people tend to share a lot with me. Well, you can see I also do the same, because, I've got to a point in my life, I think you have to be authentic. And if you're there to help people, they don't want to know that you're perfect. They don't want to think you've never had any struggles or challenges, because how can you really help somebody if you've never struggled? I've struggled. Exactly. I've struggled in my life. I've had millions of challenges. But what I know is that, when you keep facing up to those challenges, you just keep stepping up. And I see everything as like a ladder. We just go up to the next step, the next step, the next step, the next step. And the whole point is to express yourself and be authentic in the world and share what you have to share. Because if you've got something that somebody needs, then you've got something worth sharing, then it's needed. And nobody can share it the way you do, each individual person.
Yeah. Well, and we all resonate with different people. So there'll be some people who think, oh God, I could never work with Vanessa. And then there'll be those who are going, oh my God, she's the only person I want to work with. And it's finding those people who you are a good fit for, and who, they're a good fit for you.
Absolutely. And it's the same, vice versa for me, because I don't want to work with somebody that doesn't feel right to me.
Exactly.
I don't think I can help. There's no point. It goes against the grain.
Mm-hmm. No, and it's about finding that match, isn't it?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Vanessa, can we just move on a little bit? We have talked about some of the personal challenges that you've gone through along the way. How do you now, at very different point in life, how do you make sure that you are still looking after yourself, that you're managing along with helping all of the other people in the business side, that you're managing your own well-being?
So, well, first of all, actually, this year, for the first time ever in my life, I took a personal trainer. I've got a
Oh,
personal trainer, and I was
fantastic.
always going to classes at the gym regularly throughout my adult life anyway. So there's always been a keenness to do that, not just for physical reasons, but also emotional and mental reasons, because I think exercise is very good for de-stressing. So I have a regime. I actually had my session with him this morning, and I do work out 5 days a week, 5 days out of 7 a week. And that's really, really important to me. And so that's a starting place. The other thing is, I think it's important. I drink plenty of water. I eat reasonably healthily. I'm not perfect, by the way, but I do eat reasonably healthily. I like to get out and have fresh air. If it's a sunny day like today, I have to at some point get out, even if it's for 10 or 15 minutes, because the sun is shining and I want to get the sun. So I don't just say, oh, we've got to work, 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 work. I make sure that there's these other elements in my life. And this is what I also teach my clients, by the way. So it's not, I have to do it because I have to do what I'm teaching my clients. I can't tell my clients you need to do this and then not do it myself, because that's not right. That's not congruent, is it?
No.
So it's it's really, really vital for people to do that, because when people just say, well, I'll sit here at my desk and I'll slog away till midnight, I can't do that physically anyway, they're not being as productive as they could be. It's much better to have those breaks. And everybody knows these things. It's not that people don't know, but they just, for some reason, don't do it. And I think part of that is you are as important as your clients.
And I agree completely. And I've had conversations when I was doing more coaching, probably, and helping people on the practical side of overwhelm. And those conversations where, if you work until you're sick, you can't help anybody. You can't help your clients. You can no longer help yourself. So you have to put yourself first
You
in
do.
in many things.
But so many people, first of all, not that I'm a sexist person, but women weren't taught that, because women, through the ages have been the carers. And so therefore they were always used to putting everybody else first. And so it goes against the grain. And a lot of us were taught as children, don't be selfish. Well, I'm teaching you, do be selfish, because if you're not looking after yourself, you really can't look after other people. So it's really vital to do that.
And that is, actually, I think that's really great advice as well. Is you have to look after yourself, and sometimes that does feel selfish. So just before we wrap up, Vanessa, are there any, I guess, and you've actually shared quite a few throughout, but are there any specific, maybe tips that you'd like to share for somebody who, well, whether they're in business already, whether they're starting out, just something that they can take away going, yeah, actually, I need to keep that in my mind?
Well, obviously, value is the key message, isn't it? Look for what is the value in what I do. Ask yourself that question constantly. What's the value in this for the client? And the value might be different for every client that you speak to. And also, secondly, understand that money is nothing. It's just energy. It's an exchange. It doesn't have all the emotions attached to it that we put to it. So when you're feeling emotional about money, this is just your what you've learned. It's what's in your unconscious mind, what society has told you, what your parents have told you. And it's just coming up saying, money is the root of all evil, and money doesn't grow on trees, and whatever it was that you heard and have heard many times before. Money is a means of exchange. Any emotions that you attach to it, you're attaching to it. Money is not good or bad. You can do good things with money, you can do bad things with money. But it
And
is just an
that's true.
exchange. I
Yes.
don't know if that's helpful. If you're going new into business, start as you mean to go on.
Yeah, it's hard to go back and undo what you put in place initially, isn't it?
And even then, you still won't be able to do everything when you first start out. But don't think to yourself, well, I'll just get any clients just to get clients, because that's what people do. And then they've spent a lifetime trying to correct that later on. Be discerning, decide what it is that you offer, who you're offering it to, how much you want to charge.
So that is something which I think from the various people that I speak to, that is really difficult when you're at a point where money has become important, because, maybe the savings or whatever you were using to start your business are starting to run low.
Yeah.
How do you walk away from somebody who wants to pay you, and yet that they might be the wrong person, they might be paying less than what your worth is, or possibly both of those? So how do you have any advice for how people can actually make that decision when they're in that situation?
Well, that's a challenging question to ask me,
Sorry,
Debra.
right at the end.
Very challenging.
You thought I was going to say goodbye, didn't you, Vanessa?
It's challenging because everybody's an individual. I don't think I can prescribe one answer that's going to satisfy everybody who might be listening. All I can say is make the decision based on love, not fear. When you make decisions based on fear is a negative energy, and that will not see you right in the long run. You might get a few shekels coming in, but that client, if your gut says this is not the right client, it also might be that they might be a nightmare, what I call a piter client, which is pain in the arse. They might turn out to be somebody who doesn't pay you, who has you running around like a headless chicken, who makes your confidence dip, etc. So I know we need money to live on, but if you make a decision to take somebody on, do it consciously. Don't do it from a place of fear.
That is great. Thank you very much. And sorry for ending off with such a challenging question.
Well, no, you see, my unconscious mind came up with the answer nevertheless. So thank you, unconscious mind. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, Vanessa. And for anybody who's listening and wants to get in touch with Vanessa or learn more about what Vanessa does, you'll be able to find links and information on the show notes in the podcast. So thank you again, Vanessa.
You're very welcome. It's Vanessa Ugatti, the True Worth Expert. If you Google me, there's only one of me, so you should be able to find me.
Bridging Gaps, the business podcast, was produced by Debra Levitt of Bridge Road Consultants Limited, with original music provided by Pete Dineley.
You've been listening to Debra Levitt on Bridging Gaps, the business podcast.